Good morning, students. In this class, we will see about the amniotic fluid embolism. Amniotic fluid embolism is a rare but serious condition that occurs when amniotic fluid or fetal material in the fetal cells enters the mother's bloodstream. Amniotic fluid embolism is most likely to occur during delivery or in the immediate postpartum period. Amniotic fluid embolism is a life-threatening obstetric emergency characterized by sudden cardiorespiratory collapse and disseminated intravascular coagulation. Amniotic fluid embolism occurs in 2 to 8 per 1 lakh deliveries. Identifiable risk factors include older maternal age, multiplicity, intense contractions during labor, abdominal trauma, cesarean section, induction of labor, placenta previa, eclampsia, multiple pregnancy, tears in the uterus or cervix, early separation of placenta from the uterus wall, fetal factors like fetal distress, fetal death, and a male baby. Clinical presentations, the symptoms are often sudden. The presenting signs and symptoms of amniotic fluid embolism involve many organ systems. The initial response is acute pulmonary hypertension vasospasm leading to right ventricular failure, hypoxia, and cardiac arrest. The following signs and symptoms are indicative of possible amniotic fluid embolism. Acute dyspnea of sudden agitation, sudden chills, shivering, sweating, coughing, and anxiety are common premonitory symptoms. Labored breathing and tachypnea may occur. Cough. This is usually a manifestation of dyspnea. Altered mental status, rapid decline in pulse oximetry values, sudden absence or decrease in the end tidal carbon dioxide may apparent. Hypotension, hemodynamic compromise quickly follows these prodromal signs. Hypertension is the most common presenting sign and symptom. Blood pressure may drop significantly with the loss of diastolic measurement. Some researchers postulate that acute anaphylactoid reaction may play a part in the development of cardiovascular collapse. Cyanosis, ventilation perfusion mismatching as a result of pulmonary vascular constriction at the onset of AFE may explain sudden hypoxia and respiratory arrest. As hypoxia or hypoxemia progresses, circumoral and peripheral cyanosis and changes in the mucous membrane may manifest. Fetal bradycardia. In response to hypoxic insult, fetal rate may drop less than 110. If this drop lasts for 10 minutes or more, it is a bradycardia. A rate of 60 beats per minute or less over 3 to 5 minutes may indicate terminal bradycardia. Encephalopathy associated with AFE is thought to be a secondary to hypoxia and include a spectrum of symptoms ranging from altered mental state to seizures. Clonic seizures are seen in 10 to 50% of patients. Uterine atony. Uterine atony usually results in excessive bleeding after delivery. Acute pulmonary hypertension and vasospasm result in right ventricular failure, hypoxia, and cardiac arrest. Pulmonary hypertension, right ventricle means right heart strain, failure to be in the sort of physical amniotic fluid debris in the pulmonary vasculature. If one survives this initial insult, the pulmonary hypertension generally not sustained and may be replaced with left ventricular failure and pulmonary edema. Increased pulmonary artery pressure has not been consistently reported, probably because this finding may be short-lived. When cardiac pressure are measured early in this process, pulmonary and right ventricular pressures have been found to be elevated. Coagulopathy or severe hemorrhage, coagulation disorders are a prominent feature of amniotic fluid syndrome. DIC is present more than 83% of patients with AFE. The onset is occur as quickly as 10 to 30 minutes from the onset of symptoms or may be delayed as long as 4 hours. Whether the coagulopathy is primary consumptive process or due to massive fibrinolysis is controversial. Amniotic fluid contains tissue factor that act as a procoagulant and may account for coagulopathy. Tissue factor binds with factor number 7 and activates the extrinsic coagulation pathway. Alternatively, the coagulopathy may be related to fibrinolysis due to increased levels of plasminogen activation inhibitor in the amniotic fluid. The four criteria must be present to make diagnosis of amniotic fluid embolism. It includes acute hypotension or cardiac arrest, acute hypoxia, coagulopathy or severe hemorrhage in the absence of other explanations, all of these occurring during labor, cesarean delivery, dilatation evacuation, or within 30 minutes postpartum with no other explanation of findings. This constitutes a diagnosis of amniotic fluid embolism. Diagnosis. The initial diagnostic evaluation should include continuous pulse oximetry and arterial blood gas measurements to determine the degree of hypoxemia. ABG levels. Expect the ranges consist with hypoxia or hypoxemia, decreased pH, decreased PO2, increased PCO2, and base excess increase. Second, serial complete blood counts and coagulation studies should send to the follow the trends and detect early coagulopathy. CBC with platelets, prothrombin time and activator partial thromboplastin time. If available, fibrinogen levels should be monitored. Third, blood type and screen in anticipation for requirement of transfusion. Chest radiograph, posterior andro, and lateral findings are not usually non-specific. The chief radiographic abnormalities in AFE are diffuse bilateral, heterogeneous and homogeneous areas of increased opacity which are distinguishable from acute pulmonary edema. A third lead electrocardiogram may show tachycardia, ST segment and T wave changes and findings consist with right ventricular strain. Lung scan may demonstrate some areas of reduced radioactivity in the lung field. To prevent AFE, trauma to uterus must be avoided during maneuvers, thus insertion of pressure catheter or rupture of membrane. Insertion of the placenta during cesarean delivery should be avoided if possible, since one of the most frequent predisposing factors considered to be precipitate labor that may occur naturally, excessive, strong, and frequent uterine contractions should be controlled by administration of intravenous beta-adrenergic drugs or magnesium sulfate. Furthermore, oxytocin drugs which can precipitate excessive tetanic uterine contractions must be appropriately and judiciously. The key factors in the management of AFE are early recognition, prompt resuscitation, and delivery of the fetus. Early recognition of AFE is critical to successful outcome. Management is primarily supportive and resuscitative. General management include maintaining vital signs. The initial goal is rapid correction of maternal hemodynamic instability, which include correction of hypoxia, hypotension for preventing the additional hypoxia and subsequent end organ failure. Oxygenation and control of airway with tracheal intubation and administration of 100% oxygen with positive pressure ventilation should be performed as soon as possible. Fluid resuscitation is imperative to counteract hypotension hemodynamic instability. Treatment of hypertension include optimization of preload with rapid volume infusion of isotonic crystalloid or colloid solutions. Although both can restore blood volume in ongoing hemorrhage, transfusion of packed red blood cells is necessary to restore oxygen carrying capacity. Transthoracic or transesophageal echocardiography may guide fluid therapy in the evaluation of left ventricular filling. Arterial line and pulmonary catheter may also help to guide therapy. For refractory hypertension, vasopressor therapy is indicated. Correcting coagulopathy. Blood and blood products including fresh frozen plasma, platelets and cryoprecipitate must be available and administered early in the resuscitation phase of AFE. Administer fresh frozen plasma to normalize the prothrombin time. If fibrinogen level is less than 100 mg per deciliter, administer cryoprecipitate. Each unit of cryoprecipitate raises fibrinogen level 10 mg per deciliter. Pharmacological management include vasopressor inotrope supports generally needed to varying degrees of AFE. Central venous access should be established for vasopressor infusion and monitoring. Choice of vasopressor drugs depend upon the clinical scenario. Epinephrine may be first line of agent of choice as it is used in other anaphylactoid reactions in addition to the alpha-adrenergic vasoconstrictor effect. Phenylephrine, a pure alpha-1 antagonist, is often excellent choice early in the treatment of AFE because at that time point systemic vasodilatation is most prominent circulatory abnormality. Inotropic support like dopamine or noradrenaline may be ideal agents because of additional beta-adrenergic effect which improve cardiac function. Vasopressin may be used as primary therapy or as an adjunct to other inotrope therapies and has benefit of sparing the pulmonary vasculature and from vasoconstriction, especially at low doses. In face of right ventricular failure, Milrinone or other phosphodiesterase inhibitors should be considered. Digoxin act directly on the cardiac muscles and conduction system. Digoxin causes an increase in force and velocity of systolic contraction, a slowing of heart rate, and decreased conduction of velocity through AV node. Hydrocortisone, because of AFE, is more similar to an anaphylactic reaction. Steroids that mediate the immune response are recommended. Oxytocin, most commonly used urotonic, decreases the inflammation by suppressing migration of polymorphonuclear leukocytes and reversing increased capillary permeability. Methyl ergovinone or methogen acts directly on uterine smooth muscle, causing sustained tetanic urotonic effect that reduces uterine bleeding. Carbaprost, prostaglandin similar F2 alpha but has longer duration that produce myometrial contractions that induce hemostasis and the placental side, which reduce postpartum bleeding. Eptrotin has been also effective reducing hemorrhage in AFE. Other antifibrinolytic drugs such as aminocarporic acid and tranexamic acid have been described in the management of obstetric hemorrhage and menorrhagia and might also be considered during AFA. Prognosis: survive after AFE has improved significantly with early recognition of this syndrome and prompt and early resistive measures. Previously, it was documented that 50% of patients die within the first hour and about two-thirds within 5 hours of event, and high incidence of severe and permanent neurological damage among the survivors. Although mortality rate has been declined, morbidity remains high with the severe sequelae. Besides neurological impairment, acute oliguria or non-oliguric renal failure, cardiac failure with left ventricular impairment, cardiogenic pulmonary edema, arrhythmias, myocardial ischemia or infarction has been reported. Respiratory failure with non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema and refractory bronchospasm are other reported sequelae. The prognosis after AF is very poor. Most women do not survive. If the patient survives with embolism, most survivors have neurogenic defects. Infant survival rate is 70%. Neurological status of the infant directly related to the time elapsed between maternal arrest and delivery. Risk of recurrence is unknown. Successful subsequent pregnancy has been reported. Despite of our lack of understanding of pathophysiological process of AFA, it is very clear that early and aggressive management of patients with clinically suspected AFI enhances both fetal and maternal resuscitation and improves survival. It is important to always consider AFI in the differential diagnosis of sudden maternal cardiopulmonary instability and remember that lack of development of DIC and hemorrhage do not exclude the diagnosis of AFE. Selective pulmonary vasodilators just nitrous oxide for treatment of severe pulmonary hypertension during acute phase of AFI for managing severe DIC resistant to conventional treatments are promising. Thank you. Thank you for listening.